Here we go. This is Luna, everybody. This is Cody's sister. Cody's with Patrick out at the property doing some work. And Luna's here. I watch her on the days that my son works, which he should be here. Normally, this is his day off, but he had to work for a few hours today, so he should be here soon to pick her up. But I figured since she's here and she's really needing cuddles because Cody's not here. Cody's not here. Yeah, they're from the same litter, even though she's about twice his size. But she's showing those signs of age too with the white around her muzzle here. She didn't used to have that. Yeah, they're over 10. They're about 10 and a half years old. Huh, Luna? Yes, she's a good girl. She's a good girl. She's a very barky girl, but she's pretty sweet. Okay, I'm going to put you down. She's so big. Anyway, I figured she was... Sorry, my skirt got all hung up in the wheel. She's barking already. It's okay. Yeah, she's needing love and attention. You're okay, girl. Yes, Justin should be here soon to pick you up. So, yeah. Anyway, hello, everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country, coming at you early like always. So, I see people already been hanging out in here. Deb's repeating herself. I mean, it's bad enough she talks to herself. Now she's repeating herself. You're losing it, Deb. Hello, Linda. I think I saw Gudrun. Didn't I see her? There she is. There she is. And Judy. Hello, hello. So, what was I going to say? I was going to say something else when I came in here. Dog's just giving me those sad eye looks. You put my legs to sleep, dog. She's got a small head, but a big body. So if you only saw her head, you'd think she was a lot smaller than she is. She's a little bit of a pinhead. She's not quite proportional. She does have a little bit of a weight problem anyway, especially once she was fixed. But she's funny because she's got long, skinny legs and then this barrel body and then a little bitty head. But she's pretty sweet. So anyway, so I was thinking it would be a good idea. And even though the other day my vocal cords were doing great, today they're not. Of course, it doesn't help that I shot 2 videos today. And then I had to, on the second video, I kept having to start parts over. It was so annoying. Grr. And I'm just like, am I ever going to say this right? One of these days, I need to do what I've seen other people do is just keep putting those parts in where I keep starting to say something and it keeps coming out wrong. And I keep saying it the wrong way. Even though in my head, I know the right way to say it, it keeps coming out of my mouth wrong. You guys know. We all do it. It's just so irritating. But yeah. And it's like, how many times? How long do I have to stand here and repeat this part over and over? So, and by the way, as always, my reboot stream link is in the description. If I get cut off, if you suddenly see it start spinning and spinning and spinning, check and make sure it's not just you, because sometimes it could just be you, either your internet, your phone, whatever it is you're using it from. But sometimes it's because YouTube just did that little quick glitch just enough that it cuts me off. So I just blamed it. That's a good one. That's good. I just blame Deb when that happens, says Deb. For those who might be here's the problem with the live is, so if you come in late or if you come in after I stop streaming, but it hasn't processed yet, it does not show the chat at all. So if you're watching it during that time, you'd be like, what is she even talking about? And if you can't see the chat, you wouldn't know. So I got to try to get in the habit of finishing what I'm reading out loud so people know what I'm talking about. Sue and Kayla here from Filer. Is that how it's pronounced? Idaho. And who's your pioneer? Think I'm saying that right. I'm late, but I'm here. I'm not really that, you're not really that late. I haven't actually started. I always start early just to give people time to come in to see if YouTube's going to, try to shut me off in the first 2 seconds so that I have time to reboot or go to the reboot. So irritating. Sometimes we have great days and I never have to use it. So trying to decide if I want to approach a couple of these topics since I better wait so I can start the actual topic on time. I got a few more minutes. That clock is still a few minutes fast, a couple of minutes fast. Hot and humid. Everybody's talking about hot and humid. And guess what? It's humid here in the form of a lot of moisture in the air, which is humidity. But I mean, like mist, rain. It's kind of, it keeps kind of going between a little bit of rain to sort of a heavy mist to maybe a sprinkle. And it's a little chilly. Not cold enough to start a fire, but almost. So at least I got my dehydrator running. It kind of helps heat things up, which by the way, so that raisin fermentation starter bread I made, that's my best one yet. It was nice and soft and it rose the best. And I do go into a little bit more detail about it in Monday's This and That video, which is one of the 2 videos I shot this morning. But I've decided I'm definitely going to shoot a new standalone video on how to make bread using the fermentation starter. Some of the sourdough methods that people use, I think, I messed around with that, for the handling of it. I wasn't impressed with results. And it could just be the difference of the type of ferment it is, rather than your standard sourdough. So when you walk outside, yeah, I can imagine. Now, Patrick, for a short time, was stationed when he was in the Army in Georgia. And he said it was horribly humid there. So this was, okay. So I grew up on the dry side of Washington State, where our summers were dry. We didn't have that kind of humidity. And it'd get hot, it'd get over 100 degrees, which is not a common temperature here. I mean, hot here is usually 80 degrees. Not that it hasn't been over 100 degrees here on a rare occasion, but when the very first summer I was here, I came here in the summer and it was one of the hottest summers ever. And it was so humid. I had never experienced humidity like that before, ever, because of where I grew up. And I was just like, no matter, I decided, okay, I'm going to put my bikini on and go lay out in the backyard and get a tan. And it was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm wearing layers and layers of clothes. It was horrible. I mean, it was a totally new thing to me. So I understand that whole, you go out there and you feel like you can't breathe because the air is so heavy. Yeah, it can get like that here if it gets really hot right after all of the heavy, heavy rain. I don't know what the percentage of humidity is. I was just like say 100% all year round, just because we get so much rain. There's always moisture everywhere, almost all the time. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get into the topic. And then I did in my grading, didn't I? I think I did. And then I'll chat about a few other things. So today it should be fairly brief, but it's not like it's nothing I've ever talked about before, but I just thought I'd cover a few things. So what I did do is I linked to a video I did several years ago about how to do your own research. So that I go more into detail on how to look stuff up and ways to go around it. And that is important to know, especially when you're trying to look things up online. It is a good idea to know how to do that. Sometimes people try to look something up and they're like, how do other people find this stuff? Well, it does take practice and learning how to word things just right. And if that doesn't work, then you try a different types of wording. So I cover a lot of that in that video. So it is a little bit different than what I'm talking about today because it's about how to do your own research, where this is generally talking about, I'm talking about just, learning how to be more self-taught. And especially in this day and age, it's really important that you learn how to do that. And once you learn how to be more self-taught, then you don't have to be dependent on paying somebody else to teach you. Again, this is why I don't like having to charge for what I do. I don't want memberships and all my stuff behind paywalls, because I just put to practice my ability of being self-taught, because I've always been that kind of person. Not that I've never taken classes. Obviously I took martial arts classes, and not saying classes in certain things aren't important. And obviously I took dance classes, and then I taught classes. However, when it came to just, learning about herbs, learning how to make my own extracts and medicinal tinctures, and a lot of different things, learning about the what individual herbs are good for what. Obviously, this is stuff I looked up. Learning how to make mead for the first time, I found a blog that it was easy, it was simple. I followed that. And then I take what I've learned, I tailor it to suit me, and then I turn around and share that information with others. So, so that, I got that information for free because people were willing to put that information out there. Now they probably got some kind of monetary, supplement through clicks, just like I do when people watch my videos. It might be getting smaller by the day, the amount I earn, but at least it's something, right? For the time that I pour into this. But then I can turn around and teach others. And so, sorry, I kind of tend to get myself a little discombobulated because my mind starts going 50 different directions. But first off, you got to understand, you got to believe that you are able to do this yourself. It's just like homeschooling your children. We always, no matter how educated any parent is, when it comes to thinking about homeschooling their child, they always, always, always feel inadequate. I've heard, even I've heard of, I've heard of parents who have teaching degrees that still feel inadequate to teach their own children. And yet they're not. They're obviously not. But even those who don't have a teaching degree, even those who don't have a degree in anything, they do have the ability to teach their own children. I mean, obviously, you've learned something to get you this far. And if you can teach your children how to read, then your children can be self-taught. So if you know how to read, or even at least know how to watch videos, you can be self-taught. Sometimes it's just knowing where to start and then putting into practice what you're learning. So obviously having books, hard copy books, is incredibly important, because you can't depend on the internet to always be there for you. I mean, there's outages. It could just be internet outages. They happen all the time. When I was with CenturyLink, they happened all the time. There's power outages that if you need power to run your, doggone it, there I go again. My brain, just the word leaving my brain and saying goodbye, see ya. I'm just going to abandon you right in the middle of a live show. Anyway, you need power to run that, right? And if you lose power, well, you don't have that. And maybe it's something important you need to look up. Obviously, hard copy books are important. So in that video, I have linked in the description, I go over several different types of books as well. And I do have another video I should have linked where I believe I don't know if I cover more or similar, but it's It's a couple of different videos in regards to building your preparedness library or yourself. There's one called Building Your Preparedness Library and one called Building Your Self-Sufficiency Library. They're similar, but have some differences. And hard copy books are definitely important, but with ease of access and internet, I hardly ever use my hard copy books when I need information. I am very, very grateful to know they are there when I need them. And, because I know I can't always depend on the internet to be there. And with certain things constantly being controlled and silenced online, you may not always be able to find the information you're looking for. And with the constant increase of dependence on AI, which it bothers me more and more every day to see how saturated in AI we're getting all around us. It just bugs the heck out of me. I see people now constantly using AI to design their thumbnails. It's like, what happened to your own personal creativity? And, I even had somebody recommend to me, and I don't know if this was just about putting out content or about writing a book about using AI. It's like, I know they meant well, but absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm going to be me, and I'm not going to rely on something fake to do my work for me. It's an easy way out. And here's the thing. I'm getting a little off topic, but it does kind of coincide because I've been hearing about how now students in high school and college are using AI to write their papers for them. And there's not really a lot that the teachers and the professors can do other than they would have to take the extra step and say, I need this to be handwritten or taking tests right in front of the instructor, handwritten, everything handwritten. Handwritten essays, nothing printed, nothing printed out on a computer. Everything handwritten. And I think that's the only way. So with that being said, you got people graduating from high school, graduating from college, who really know nothing. People are becoming more and more stupid because now they're not only, first of all, we were dependent on this, that, and the other thing. So we were kind of losing our creativity. Now with AI, not only are we losing creativity, we're just flat out losing knowledge. And people have no idea how to be self-taught at all because we've got AI to do everything for us. I think it's rather disgusting in many ways. So now more than ever, people need to learn. It's not that hard to learn how, but if we become progressively dumber and more dumbed down at the ability to teach ourselves, to be able to read for ourselves, to be able to do things for ourselves, it is going to get progressively harder to just learn how to be self-taught, to have reading comprehension. And these things are important because if you can read and you have reading comprehension, which is also important, and you understand, language is like, that's the other thing. If you look back over the years, this is why people think the King James Bible is so hard to understand because, 400 years ago, that language that was actually written to where children could understand it. But now as adults, why is it adults have a hard time understanding a lot of the language in the King James? Because our language, our English has become so dumbed down. We've had so many, I cannot remember. I saw something the other day and it didn't totally surprise me of the difference of how many words were in our common English language to how much is in there now. There's like a fraction of the words. We only use a fraction of the words that were once used. And so we're losing so much as it is. We need to try to hang on to that. We need to try to go back to Learn new words. They're actually old words, but learn them. I'm always learning something new. We were, Patrick and I listened to scripture at least 5. We just got done with Psalms the other night. So we do 10 chapters a day when it's Psalms, 5 chapters a day through everything else pretty much. And so we're in Proverbs, and there was a word called am I gonna say it? Am I gonna remember it? Prating, prating, a prating fool. And I'm like, how many times have we been through Proverbs and I don't remember seeing the word prating before? Have you ever heard of that word? I never heard of it before. Well, basically, it's someone who just, which I'm guilty of doing this, it just rambles on, just chatter, chatter, chatter about nothing. Okay. But see, I learned a new word. So every time we come across a word, that's like, wait a minute, what does that mean? And part of the reason I want to know what it means is it helps me to understand that scripture better. But also, I'm increasing my vocabulary. Well, I've heard of prattling. That's not the word. There's not 2 T's in it. It was prating. It was actually pronounced. We listened to Alexander Scorby, and he pronounced it prating. It's only 1 T and no L. Prating. Prating. So to prate is to chatter, to ramble, not nonsense, just things that don't matter. So my point in bringing that up is, I think we need to make it at least a weekly thing where we try to learn something new, whether it be a new word that we can add to our vocabulary, or a new skill, or just a fraction of a new skill. Like, let's say this whole thing with the fermentation starter bread. I've been working on it for years, and then I set it aside for a while. It's like, okay, that turned out all right. I'll go back to my dry yeast making. Then I'll come back and I'll tackle it again. And right now I'm so into it. I'm really, really enjoying it more now than ever. But each time I do it, I'm learning something a little bit different, a little bit new. And it's given me more experience, and I'm becoming better at what I'm doing. So this last loaf of bread I made with the raisin fermentation starter turned out, I would say, as good as my regular dry yeast bread. And the rise, the texture, it's great. I love it. And so, but it doesn't mean I'm just going to stop and keep always doing it that way. I want to keep trying new things, different types of fermentation starters made with different types of things. Like the honeysuckle fermentation starter, that one turned out really good as well. So I think we need to keep our brains sharp. We need to be able to always try to challenge ourselves in something, just something. It's like me really trying to break the habit that many, many people have, because now it stands out to me. I hear it all the time. And that's using the unnecessary these ones or those ones. Those are these. You don't have to add ones to it. And I do it all the time. But I'm really trying to break myself of that. So a lot of times our bad grammar isn't because we weren't necessarily taught correctly, but it's because it became a habit. I remember one day when I realized, why do we say I could care less? Why do so many people, it dawned on me one day. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Because if you say I could care less, that means you actually care a little bit. To say you couldn't care less means you don't care at all. And one day that dawned on me, and I'm like, have we all been saying this wrong? So I had to look it up. This was years ago. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I was right. We've been saying it wrong all this time. So we pick up bad grammar, bad habits, sometimes from our own teachers, our friends, our family, our parents. It happens. And this is why another reason why I get really irritated that people want to play grammar Nazi. And almost every person who's a grammar Nazi, I've seen them either in text or heard them say something with bad grammar, something that I knew was bad grammar and didn't practice. So we all have our little things, right? And it all just comes from what we hear on a regular basis. So that, I guess that's what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to belittle anyone for that. The point is that we can all find something that we can challenge ourselves at being better at. And that's going to help that's going to help increase our knowledge and increase our ability to be able to grasp new concepts and ideas. So then, so we, as far as having things to learn from, obviously we have the books, we have the internet, whether it be reading blogs, reading research papers, and watching videos. And of course, with that, you always have to vet everything, especially things that are online. Well, even things that are in books. It's always a good idea to have more than just one source. You can never trust just one source, because whoever wrote that or made that video very likely has something wrong. And then you're going to now have wrong or bad advice or bad information that you're now going to pass on to others. So, and guilty right here, guilty of doing that. So this is why it's important to cross-reference everything, no matter what source. I don't care what source it's coming from. So that's another part of being self-taught. Okay. And then obviously the next couple of things are the doing, the getting the experience. So I was talking about this the other day. You got to have the experience, because you might read 5 books on one topic, 5 whole books on one thing. How much of that's going to stick in your brain? If you don't have the experience and start working with this stuff, there's going to be something you miss. There's going to be something you forget all the time. I mean, I don't know how many times I compile information together to put a video out like, this herb is good for blah, 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 blah. But I might only remember blah, but not the rest of it. But then once I start using that herb for these other things, then, oh, I remember now. That's like I'm actually growing lobelia this year, I think is how you pronounce it. I could be wrong. See, I don't know that. I could be wrong. Just to try it. But because I saw the starts on Azure Standard, I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and get a couple of those. They're beautiful. But I don't remember what all they're good for. I remember somebody saying it helped them with something in one of my natural healing testimonies, a couple different people, but now I can't remember what it was. So now I'm going to have to go research it. And sometimes if it's something I already have a video on, it's like, I got to go watch my doggone video because I forgot. And then double check that information again against more other places, especially if it's an older video, when I was first starting to do that. So yeah, this is important. These things are important. Okay. These are important. And then, so I mentioned experiment, but as you're experimenting, you learn how to be creative, because all the things in all those books might still not teach you something that you will learn simply by doing. This whole thing with using the fermentation starter to make bread, this isn't something I read about or learned anywhere. I just decided to try. So I'm basically learning something new because I'm trying something different. And as the more I work with it, the better I get at it. And there's many things like that where I'm like, I'm going to try an experiment. Well, that didn't work out really good. So mainly I was thinking lung benefits, but now distraction. I was thinking lung benefits, but when I quickly looked it up specifically for that, I couldn't find that. I still can't remember what it was I found, but that's what I was thinking. So if that grows good for me and it works as good as mullein, I may not worry about the mullein anymore. We'll see. Anyway, darn, I lost my train of thought now. But I know I was talking about the creativity thing and thinking outside the box. Because I don't know. I believe that it's so important. That's one thing I realized as through my years of being a dance instructor, especially when working with the young ones, the 3 and 4 year olds. The one thing I found with them, and I'd learned along the way by learning about like um, personality. I was going to say personality theories. That was a college course I took. Let me see. Learning styles. And I I came to understand that the younger the child is, if you can start teaching them to be creative, give them the opportunity to be creative and to think outside the box, they're going to be far better set for just education in general, and then being able to learn for themselves. Far better. So, what I started incorporating into my 3 and 4 year old class, instead of just teaching them these basics, like this is how you point your toe, this is first position, this is second position, this is third, this is fourth, this is fifth position. And, with your feet, you have 5 different basic positions in ballet, or teaching them how to lift their leg or do a certain kind of jump, or a cat leap, which is a pas de chat, and all this kind of stuff, right? And all the basics that go with ballet and then in dance in general. I decided, okay, now you've got some of these basics. You know how to do a turn, you know how to do this little cat jump. Now, what I want you to do, I usually do this at the end of class. I just put on some music and one at a time have them go diagonally, because that's the longest distance, going diagonally across the room. Make something up. Combine all the steps you've learned with whatever you want and make your own dance. Make up your own little routine going across the room, moving across the room. And usually, if you try to do that with the older students, they would just be like, what? Younger ones are more likely to be able to, okay. And they just go with it. They go with it. They learn how to think outside the box. And the more they do it, the better they would get at combining things together. So I might give my idea, like try something like this, like do a cat jump and then do a little turn and then do a grand jeté, or a puddle jump, as I called it for the little ones, to help give them a visual. They pretend like they were jumping over big puddles, so I'd call them puddle jumps instead of a grand jeté. So it was a very, very fun way to get them to see that they have their own creativity they can tap into. And when you see their face brighten up when they realize they can do this and they don't have to be afraid to try, it was so amazing. But even as adults, we can do that. It's just a lot easier if you can tap into that when you're younger. There's something about once they go to public school, they hit that age and they start going to public school, all that gets, I mean, this is what I learned. It's like when a kid hits about 5 or 6 years old, they start to lose that ability to tap into the creativity. And I don't think it's because of the age. I think it's because that's the age they typically start going to public school. And now they're being taught to only think inside of a box and only learn a certain way, rather than